Good evening, I'm Cathy Lewis. If you've driven in downtown Norfolk, then you know that light rail is on its way. It won't take you very far, only about 7.4 miles at this stage, but proponents say it's just the beginning. Construction is underway, but the project known as the Tide is a bit behind schedule and over budget. Last week came the embarrassing and ironic acknowledgement that the contractor for the Tide had failed to take the Tide into consideration when calculating the number of pilings that would have to be removed from the Broad Creek Bridge. When the ebbing and flowing were all done, it was clear that dozens more pilings would have to be removed. Well, meanwhile, there is another development underway in Virginia Beach, which of course turned thumbs down to light rail years ago. Now it appears to be ready to take another look. What has changed in the meantime? Well, there are lots of things that have changed, not the least of which is the development of Town Center, a complex of businesses, shops, and homes that's about halfway between Norfolk and the oceanfront. And Lisa Godley reports Town Center is getting ready to grow again.
The slowing economy has not hurt development at the Town Center in Virginia Beach. With a $60 million commitment from Virginia Beach City Council, 2 new buildings will soon call Town Center home.
I know that because of the economy right now, I know that it's kind of probably brought some questions, but I think for what they plan for this area, it's wonderful. I've lived here 40 years. I can't believe we finally got a downtown area.
I think it's good. The one thing is that they need to get the businesses here so that the other businesses can thrive around here. We've got a lot of restaurants around here, which is great, but this is really kind of viewed as Virginia Beach's, food court, not Virginia Beach Town Center. And I think they're doing a disservice if they can't get the businesses in here and the people that come here to actually frequent the shops and the other stores that are here right now.
This is what you can expect to see with the newest phase. In the space where the Beacon building now sits on Virginia Beach Boulevard, developer Amada Hoffler plans to erect somewhat of a twin to the existing Town Center. While the architecture will be different, the size and stature will be similar. Like Town Center, the new building will have retail on the ground floor, a parking garage, and provide about 300,000 square feet of office space. About 2 blocks away, across the street from the Sandler Center, is another new project, one Armada Hoffler president and CEO Lou Haddad calls a fun building. This multi-use facility will have an apartment component, a hotel, a conference center, and retail shops. I asked Mr. Haddad about the need for a hotel component and conference center.
Currently, the Westin is in ramp-up stage, which takes a few years. But in the first year, even in spite of the state of the economy, it was a bit ahead of projections, which tell us long-term that there's going to be a need for additional rooms. The existing conference center is doing very well, but it's a little bit undersized for what ultimately will be nearly a 600-room complex. And so the meeting space needs to grow to service all of those rooms, and we're counting within Town Center the Hilton Garden Inn as well as the Aloft and the Westin.
While some say with the economy the way it is, this is not the time for the city to be spending in excess of $60 million to help with the Town Center project, others say the money is needed to fulfill the Town Center promise.
So I think the more development would definitely be better. I think it'll be great for the mall here and for us. I mean, we've had so far, I think, very successful, and it's just, continues to grow. I think that'll be a good thing for the economy of Virginia Beach in general.
I think it's important that the public knows that the risk is entirely borne by the private side in this venture. The assistance from the city in ultimately paying for the public portions of the project doesn't occur until we design, build, finance, and move tenants into these facilities.
Armada Hoffler plans to break ground on this latest phase by the end of the year. It should take about 3 years before the new projects are complete. For What Matters, I'm Lisa Godley.
So you can see how all of this begins to come together, and we'll talk about it in the course of our time together tonight. Happy to have Michael Towns with us, who is the president and CEO of Hampton Roads Transit. Councilman Randy Wright joins us. He has been an early advocate of light rail, and we're also happy to have Councilman James Wood with us from Virginia Beach City Council. Good to have all of you with us tonight.
Thank you for
having
having
me
me
here. It's so intriguing to think about this whole history of light rail. Randy Wright, we were talking about this idea, and you and I have been talking about this for so many years, and you as well, Michael, lots and lots of years on this project. And it's interesting to look back over time and see how much has changed since the time we first started talking about this and what we have underway now.
Well, you know, if you talk about the referendum that took place in Virginia Beach, just look at the changes since then. The town centers of byproduct
7 years
have
ago,
changed.
something like that.
Look at here. What's 10 years ago? It's 1999.
Oh, exactly so. I was thinking about
exactly,
the
to be exact. But look at how downtown Norfolk has changed as well, with the cruise terminal, with all of the different things. MacArthur Center wasn't in existence when that referendum took place. So both cities have changed dramatically. But more importantly, it's also magnifies the added effort to bring those two together with something other than just to be dependent upon the vehicle. And that's what this offers, is a great
sort of a
choice.
larger...
Well, it's a super choice that doesn't exist today.
And we have 7.4 miles, or we'll have 7.4 miles next year at some point when the project is finished. But I think all along it was never envisioned that this was just going to be a 7.4 mile track,
we've said from day one that this was a starter line with a vision to expand. And of course, we in Norfolk have talked about the need to go to the naval base, and Virginia Beach is having some really good discussion now about taking it to town center and to the oceanfront. But if you bring those together and you run a spur to Oceana, then you've interconnected the ability to move 40,000 plus people a day, and that's when you really have an enormous impact on the traffic situation.
And Councilman Wood, back in the day when we were first talking about light rail back in ’99, hard to believe it's been that long ago, you didn't have town center. And now you're looking at an expansion of town center. We'll talk about that in a moment. But bring us up to date on what that process is to begin to look at that expansion, and what the political reality is on council now as compared to what it perhaps was at one time.
Are you talking about the expansion of town center or light rail?
On the light rail.
Well, first off, what we're going through is essentially two tasks, if you will. The first task being an alternatives analysis and a draft environmental impact statement that takes a look at extending light rail from Newtown Road to the oceanfront. The second part of that, as Randy mentioned, would be taking it from the terminus, I guess, at the medical center to the naval base. So that process is underway in terms of selecting the consultant who will put that analysis together. Then we'll take a look at it, and all this is required by the federal funding sources that we saw.
And certainly a big piece of this is that Norfolk Southern railway.
Well, sure,
there,
and
the
that's, I mean, that is the one advantage I think that we have over many other communities that try to get light rail. As a matter of fact, I was in Tampa with the Chamber of Commerce on a interregional visit a few months back, and Tampa's dying for light rail. I mean, they really want it, and they look at Hampton Roads as a success story because they have no right-of-way for it. And this Norfolk Southern right-of-way it goes right down the middle of the city. And when you think about the geography of Virginia Beach, you've got basically three main east-west routes. You've got 264, which is always backed up. You've got Virginia Beach Boulevard, which is consistently backed up, and you've got Shore Drive, which is consistently backed up. You know, and you think about moving people across the width of our city, you've got to come up with another alternative.
And so as you think about the political realities between then and now, you've just had a city council election in the past year. You have new folk coming on board. You had a referendum in '99 where the voters said, I don't think so. So will this then be a council decision this time around, or will it be one, as many people have suggested, that will be put to the voters again?
Well, there's certainly, well, let me preface this by saying, obviously I'm on the record as not supporting a referendum. I've been mentioned in the paper a few times unfavorably about that, but I understand that. In my opinion, a referendum is not the way to go unless you're talking about extremely significant projects, and I'm talking about billions of dollars and things like that. People are elected and they're expected to take the tough decisions. And if you don't want to do that, then you really don't need to serve, in my opinion. Having said that, I may be in the minority on the council on this, and there may be a referendum.
But the new mayor seems to be interested in this project moving forward, if I'm not mistaken.
He does seem to be interested in this project moving forward. I would say that's accurate.
So it's a different political climate then, perhaps, than it may have at one time been.
Well, the council has completely changed since 1999. Several times, and before this EIS is complete, there'll be
environmental impact statement.
Yeah, right. There'll be another election.
Yeah.
And
I just think it's interesting to look at. There's politics on the council, and then there's politics in the community, and all of those, it seems to me, if you look, have really shifted in some interesting ways where people are now beginning to look at this. And certainly in Norfolk, there was a lot of concern about this all along as well, politically in Norfolk.
Yeah. Well, Norfolk took the approach that leaders lead, and we have information, and Norfolk's always been unabashed to take tough stands, and MacArthur Center is a classic example. As the editorial pointed out, there were people that wanted to have a referendum on Harbor Park and a referendum on MacArthur Center and a referendum, and you can't govern by putting everything on referendum. I mean, that's what the elections are about, and that's why people are elected to make those decisions. I mean, that's good government doesn't come by putting everything on a referendum.
So as we look at the project at the moment, everybody who drives through downtown is clearly aware that light rail is coming, no question about it. There has been what I call this embarrassing and ironic moment where you found these additional pilings, Michael Towns. What went on with that, and is it your sense that that's going to be a problem going forward?
It was an embarrassing and ironic moment. It wasn't the best thing for the project. But it's not uncommon in major infrastructure projects that these things are uncovered. You do pre-construction surveys, and you do them with professional firms, and you give them professional direction. They have to meet a standard of care, but that standard of care doesn't guarantee that they'll find all unforeseen conditions. Therefore, you have contingencies. What has happened in this case is well within the contingencies. It doesn't increase the total cost of the project in our projections of project completion. We will take a very hard look at what this engineering contractor did to see if it indeed met the standard of care as was preliminarily indicated. If they did not perform correctly, we'll take the recourses that are necessary on behalf of the public. I want people to know that these are difficult projects. When we get into the streets of downtown Norfolk, there will be other things that arise, hopefully not as apparently embarrassing as this. I think, as Randy had pointed out to you in our private discussion, part of this has to do with the way it was characterized by technical staff and then picked up in
Well, and that's why we want to spend some time really helping people understand what went on here, because the way it has sort of been communicated is the guy, I'm going to really completely paraphrase here, the guy came at one point, we have tides, they go up and down. Right. He didn't come back when the tide was low enough to see what was going to be there.
That's right. That was speculative. We don't know that they went at high tide and they should have gone at low tide. The other thing to take into account is, tides vary by time of year. I'm told that there are times of the year when low tide, the water is high to the point where you would not have discovered some of these piles. I think it is ridiculous that they only discovered 20 and there were many, many more. Okay, but in construction projects, what happens is when you find an unforeseen condition, were you to have to deal with that condition had it been foreseen, then you must pay to correct that condition anyway.
Well, and it has to be done anyway, right? Going forward,
I mean, it has to be done anyway.
If you're
right. Now, I think I'd like to focus on the positive. Broad Creek is not really a navigable waterway right now. If you're a boater and you want to go on the other side of that bridge, you can't get there because of all of these pilings. Now, I've talked for many years about the added value that the Tide Project has brought to transit in the region and to the community. That's another added value. We're going to make that a navigable waterway. I mean, what happened in the neighborhood where we did
Randy Park.
Yeah,
we've got a national award for the mitigation as a result of the rail project out there, a national award.
The other interesting piece of this, and it's hard to imagine now, and I say this as somebody who, when she first heard about MacArthur Mall, said, well, sounds really nice. I just can't quite imagine it, But the truth of the matter is that's probably what they said in Arlington back in the day when it was this little suburb in the D.C. area, and the stations there and the impact of those stations has really changed the nature of that community.
This is going to transform Hampton Roads. You know, we were talking before we went on the air. When I first came to Hampton Roads, it was a long-distance call from Hampton to Norfolk.
Yeah.
Now, this is a big, major metropolitan area. 7 contiguous cities that build up into the 34th largest metropolitan area in the United States. This is going to really bring this community together, transform it, give it a name nationwide. The light rail system just opened in in Phoenix, Arizona recently. When I looked at the NFC championship game, the first thing I saw on the TV was the light rail. It becomes an icon of the region. That's what's going to happen here.
And I think Charlotte's already exceeded its ridership expectations in the time that it's...
They've exceeded their 10-year ridership projections in the first year. We're going to do the same thing.
You know, and this conversation we're having around sort of public investment in these projects is an interesting one, and I would imagine that the general public is probably has their awareness heightened around it as a result of all the national news about bailouts and whatever you want to call it, bailouts, plans, whatever. And so there is a heightened level of sensitivity. And so it was into this environment that Council recently voted to put $60 million of Virginia Beach toward this new phase of town center. And there were people who said, wait a minute, look at the economy, Councilman. What is this the right time to do that sort of thing?
Well, and I think it's important, and when you saw the clip just a few moments ago, the council is not putting money in it that isn't being generated by the project. And I think that's an extremely important fact for people to understand. It is a self-supporting project, and I've told people who have told me, I don't like that town center, it's a horrible idea. And I said, well, the good news is if you don't shop there, live there, or eat there, you're not paying for it. And that's really the bottom line on that. When you think about, economic times are tough, but this project is not going to come online for at least 3 years. And the city is not going to have to issue debt or do anything until all of the private construction is completed. The private developer is far more at risk than the city is. The city really has minimal risk. The city is doing infrastructure for the private developer, and it's really been a success even through these challenging times.
I want to ask all of you this question sort of against that backdrop. How tough is it now to talk about public investments in things that people can't really see yet, like light rail, like a town center expansion? How tough is it to talk to people about that in an environment where they're very sensitive about public monies being spent, and where they have looked at a fall that had stories that were replete of nothing but excess?
Yeah, it's no question that it's exacerbated the ability to communicate the wisdom behind some of the decisions that are being made. People also, at this point, are more cognizant than ever of the difficulty in getting financing for projects.
Right.
I mean, when you go out and when you have difficulty getting financing to buy an automobile, it transcends to the difficulty if you're trying to rebuild a city or to build new components to it. So we're in a whole different era, and it's one that not any of us have had experience in. It's a whole different world out there, but also it's also a more competitive global thing too. So these things to get these type of private developments that we're talking about without some city or public investment into it, they're just not going to happen. They're just not going to happen. And people say, well, if it's so good, well, why don't you let them build it? And well, it's not going to get built. But the long-term benefits is that you're molding and you're building a city for the future and amenities that people really are looking for and want in a city.
Is there much hope in the stimulus package or the recovery, whatever we're calling it, this package that seems to suggest that there's going to be money for construction to put people back to work?
Yes.
Are there implications there for this community?
For transit, there are direct implications. In fact, transit is one of the sectors that's looked at as being capable of getting those jobs on the ground in a hurry. We at HRT have a series of projects, not only the light rail project, which we characterize, I think, accurately as, what's the new term, shovel ready.
Yeah.
We're ready to go. We know how many jobs we can create. There is a special pot of money which supports light rail transit. More money was added to that pot as a result of the House bill, potentially. That money is reserved only for communities that already have a full funded grant agreement to build rail.
So the fact that we're sort of underway with this thing is helpful.
We're in that list. Okay, so that we have an excellent opportunity to enhance this project further. Because a part of the cost overruns that we talked about a little earlier weren't just cost overruns. They were enhancements to the base project. We can enhance it further. We have one-car station sites now. We believe we can get money to make them two-car station sites. We can increase the size of park and ride facilities. We can buy more rail cars because we'd already talked about our confidence that ridership will exceed 10-year projections in the first year. The problem that creates is a capacity problem. People want to ride, you don't have enough space in the cars. So we can plan ahead for that.
One of the things that, while you were saying that, it reminds me of the conversation we've been having about transportation, and you know, all these things are so connected. And there is this great debate, and it is quite a debate, over what to do about the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. I will tell you that every time we talk about this, somebody says, put light rail in that thing. We've got to have light rail to connect the south side and the peninsula. And if you've ever sat at the tunnel, you probably would enjoy sitting back with a book on a light rail. How, the delay in that argument, in resolving that issue, how does that play into all of this?
Well, it constrains that vision that we've been talking about for a region-wide rail connection. And you know, Randy and Jim have talked about Norfolk and Virginia Beach, where Portsmouth has passed a resolution. They envision it coming through a rebuilt Midtown tunnel and serving that side of the Elizabeth River. You know, I'm not going to concentrate on whether it's a rebuilt Monitor Merrimack or
you've got a gracious plenty right now.
As long as we get an access to Northern Hampton Roads, then we can.
However it is.
Right now, the plan right now is that there be a third crossing, which is essentially a rebuilt Monitor Merrimack with an envelope for high occupancy transit to go through that. If the same can be done at Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, we'd take a strong look at accommodating that.
But I'd like to follow on something Michael said, because I think it's important. I don't think we're stressing enough that this is a regional issue, and that this is not done in a vacuum. You know, it's a starter line, as they said. It needs to go to Virginia Beach. It needs to go to Portsmouth. It needs to go to Chesapeake. It needs to go to the peninsula. It needs to go to all these places. The Washington, D.C. Metro wasn't built in 5 years. Completely
it's still being built.
It's still being built out, and that could be our model. Right. Granted, that's heavy rail, but that should be our model. That we are going to build out to the various areas and to serve the communities, because this doesn't work unless we can get our citizens where they want to go. Well,
that's a fact, and if you look at Northern Virginia, I would submit to you that the one thing that has characteristically changed that whole community has been the transit, no question. Thanks to all of you for being with us, and we'll look forward to more information as the project continues. And I'll be back in just a moment with a look at comments about one of our recent shows. A few weeks back, we introduced you to members of the lost class of 1959, Norfolk seniors from across the city whose schools were closed as a result of massive resistance. We heard from lots of you who've been thinking about this story for about 50 years now. Ann Vera Belli wrote, "As an adult who now sees no color, I realized that innocent blacks and whites were used by those who wanted to control integration in a negative way, stir up strife so that their careers could be successful. I ended up graduating a year later than I should have due to the school closings and changes of schools." Willard Frank thought we should have done a better job of clarifying the role of the Norfolk Committee for Public Schools. This is the grassroots effort that built momentum to break the fear in the white community, he wrote, open the political arena to citizen involvement, change white attitudes towards segregation, and to create and fund the court case that opened the schools. After all of this had been accomplished from the grassroots, Willard writes, the 100 businessmen, many of whom were earlier secret supporters of open and desegregated Public Schools at the last minute went public. But that courageous position stood on the shoulders of thousands of Norfolk citizens who joined the Norfolk Committee of Public Schools, funded its efforts, and let their names be used in public in support of the schools. They deserve much credit. The committee is long since disbanded, and the site of its office at Brambleton and Bush is now a parking lot, but it is a significant part of the story that needs to be told. Taylor Greenberg, like many writers, wanted us to know that it wasn't as easy for white students to befriend the integrating black students as it may seem now, 50 years later. I felt badly about the isolation of Lewis' cousins, so dramatically represented in the photographs of him in the Maury Auditorium. I also recall an image of him isolated in the lunchroom. But I also know full well what would have happened to any white students who had gone over to befriend him. Clearly, there's still a lot of pent-up emotion about those events 50 years ago this month. And you can check out our website for links to community events where you can learn more about this region's role in this important chapter in civil rights history and the challenges it continues to bring us. We always like to hear from you, so give us a call at 889-9437. You can check out our website at whatmatters.tv. And that's where you can also sign up for a weekly e-bit that'll let you know what we're working on for next week's show. Write to us, 5200 Hampton Boulevard, Norfolk, Virginia, 23505, or you can email us at whatmatters@whro.org. You can also find us on Facebook. And by the way, did you know that you can download this program at iTunes? It's a great way to experience the show if you can't be in front of your television set. Next week, we go one-on-one with the new mayor of Virginia Beach. The Honorable Will Sessoms joins us next week on What Matters. Thanks for watching.